So first of all, I want to congratulate Madhulika ma'am also for leading this project ahead with such a vigor. One of the main reason for that is, I will be talking about it shortly. So we all understand the immense need for documentation of different objects, and I can vouch for the fact that sculptures or images is one of the most prominent aspect which requires our attention as well as our very close study. And I can also vouch for the fact that almost all the groups who were practicing yesterday, each of the tray consisted one or other small or partially broken images. So I am Elora. I'll be talking mostly, actually I prepared my talk mostly thinking of the central regions. So I not included much of the other sculptures. So throughout my lectures I'll be taking you through throughout the lectures, I'll be taking you through some of the prominent issues that comes when we are trying to document, when we are trying to study sculptures or images. Next. Next. Okay. Yeah. So don't be scared by looking at the outline of the talk. I'll not take too long to complete this. So before I go to the list of the problems, sorry, taking some time to manage it. Yes. So I have put here 9 problems which actually we face most of the time, and I'll be starting with the last one. The problem with the art loss. So this is the image that I also showed in the other workshop. It's a tragic loss that we once in India we had produced this beautiful image of Avalokiteshvara, who is a bodhisattva, a particular form of Avalokiteshvara known as Lokanath. Somehow from 1940s onwards, it was in a private collection. 1962, when Ananda Kumar Swami sir noted it, published it. It was very recently, only in 2012, it was auctioned for a very grand amount of US dollar. So what happens with sculptures like this is, once they are smuggled from any site in India and into the international art market, initially there will be no attempt of selling it until a certain amount of time period, after which it will come into a private ownership. That time it can be borrowed by a museum, and finally when it is sold, it was with the Boston Museum previously, and then it was actually the Boston Museum wanted to disown. They understood there is a problem with the acquisition. After that it was published, and only in 2012 it was sold for a grand amount, so grand that it can actually help uplift poverty in certain sector of India for a good amount of year. Not only that, when I was giving the talk in Kolkata NMMA workshop, I was not very sure about it, and only recently I got to know that after it was sold to a private owner, now this museum, this image lies in the Metropolitan Museum of Art on a private loan. So this is a very typical way that we can also see the image. So the private collector or the museum got the agreement from the private collector to display it. So many of you will see nothing wrong there, but we can all understand a very underlying tone what has happened with the image. But there are cases of hopes also. For example, of course, we got back this Apsara, who is a very tranquil identification mark of our beautiful creation from the central regions in the early medieval period. I'm not going into details. Some of my teachers or my seniors are here who have also studied similar objects, and they can see more in the spirituality of it. Me coming from an archaeological background, not an an aesthetics background, I would of course try to look at the object with a very fundamental eyes, which makes me see that, of course, there was problem with the acquisition of this particular piece from Madhya Pradesh. So-called Chandela features can be seen in the image, and only 2 years back, I think, the image was returned back to us from the Metropolitan Museum Park, and then Vijay Kumar is there, who is working with one of the image smuggling and all. So he said that the particular person who has sold this to the museum, he is now in prison for this, and all over the world, in Europe or in America, everywhere he has sold numerous sculptures and images, which are now one of the most prominent pieces for some of the international museums acquisition. So the question is that it is not only the fault of the smuggler, it's also the fault of who are doing the acquisition, right? Of course, there is a great fault also which we cannot bypass at this moment. There is another one which is also very known, and which, of course, we must thank ASI for the efforts of retrieving this very important, another important piece of Pratihara of the Shiva in the Natesha form, which was earlier in one of the temple in Rajasthan, and it was stolen and it was restored back. It's at least in the display. So there are both cases like that. So this explains why, of course, this NMMA project is so important. Unless we can create this awareness, or unless we can focus on the images and their documentation to the fullest scale, that's why we need this project, and that's why we need maximum participation, so that we can not only care for our images and sculptures, but we actually understand that if we fail to protect it, it will be sold in an international art market through millions of dollars, and we will never be possibly able to see that image again, even though it originated from India. So that's why I'm very honored that I can talk about the sculptures in this workshop. Now, coming to the first question of the type, this is one of the, of course, very important criteria in our NMMA forms also for documentation. I won't go much with it, but I would like to say that, of course, I have all respect for all of the stalwarts, the scholars, and art historians, but please try to think of objects of art also beyond its aesthetic value. When we only look into the spiritualism and the aesthetics and how beautiful, mesmerizing the sculpture is, we actually do a lot of mistakes there. We uplift it only to forget its ritual, spiritual, as well as other archaeological importance also. So there should be a balance in our understanding of sculptures and images, right? So moving on to the second problem, the third problem that I'm talking about, actually we are having this discussion from Kolkata to continue even here, how to write about the time period, or the terminology, so-called. Like, we often use that, I think Bhuvan sir also in the morning was trying to tell, and I just want to take you to the details, how complex this problem is. It should not be just thought like, okay, we should no longer use Pala art, or we should no longer use Kushana art. Why we should not use? Let us understand that for the time being. Sorry? Yeah. So, this is a map of somewhere between 200 to 50 CE, 200 BC to 50 CE. So you can see there are many sites, I've taken it from Julia Shaw's work, and many sites which are already prominent here. Now, I am not showing any political empires here, right? I can be telling you about the Shunga Empire, so-called Shunga Empire. I can tell you about the Indo-Greeks, or the Bactrians who are there. I can also talk about the Indo-Scythians who are there. So they were all coexisting in some or the other region till, of course, the coming of the Kushanas, right? But when we actually look into more of the, So when we look into something like this, one of the yakshas represent one of the earliest body form or representation form in where we can get a kind of a stone representation in a very early time. So when we come to talk about yakshas, automatically there is a tendency that we will assign it to the Kushana period, right? Though, if we look closely, there is yakshas from Pithalkora, there are yakshas from Vidisha, there are yakshas from different parts of northern part of India, central part of India, as well as western part of India. And the tendency was that yakshas represent a very crucial foundation for any kind of bodily representation afterwards. And they are, of course, connected with the popular religious practices. Now, I just want to take you to the complications of this problem. For example, a very well-known yaksha image, everybody know, this is from Parkham. Of course, in Government Museum of Mathura, and there is an inscription on this which tells us that possibly the date can be similar to the one of the early time period, so it can be dated around 150 to 200 BC. Now, I want to take you to the other female image here, which is of course of a so-called another parallel cults, or of the Nagas and the Nagis, of course, who was contemporary with that. So the Northern Cement Museum has dated this image based on stylistic attributes and everything, based on 150 to 200 CE. And this one is, of course, dated by inscriptions, so we can know somewhere in between. But when it comes to the Mudgaripani Yaksha, which is also very important, there was a pair of it. One is Agnipani and another one is Mudgaripani, both from nearby to Mathura. And there is actually a similar piece in the Mathura Museum also, if you look closely. So the date has been already given to 100 BC. So the now inscription, the image is not dated by inscription. There is an inscription on this image. But if you look closely into the execution of this image, till now, people have been following the plaque which says that this is 100 BC. People have not moved beyond identifying or re-examining whether this can be actually dated to 150 BC or 100 BC. This is also called Shunga period, again. So what are we actually getting at? If you look closely, it can date around 60 BC to 150 BC. 100 CE at least. But we see that there are efforts to put sculptures into dynastic, levels. That's how we try to adjust them. Rather than studying images, their features, their stylistic patterns, their attributes, we try to fix them within levels. Are we doing a justice to the images? Another very important group or category, what we can see is, of course, the terracotta figurines. I think, though we can show grand images of sculptures, most of the time when you are documenting, you will be getting things like this, You will be getting things like this, right? Or you will be getting things like, okay, it's not moving. Sometimes it's moving too fast, but sometimes it's not. Okay. Yeah, something like that, right? So we have to understand that the terracotta figurines which were produced in Pataliputra, of course, has some, oh my God, of course has some of the similarities. Pataliputra and as well as some part of eastern India, Chandrakoitugarh, Tamluk, we have a huge number of terracotta figurines. Sometimes these are called Yakshi, sometimes are called Siddhima Devata, sometimes fertility cults, everything. We also have molds for them, that they were made by mold. But because of the label that these are Shunga terracottas, so it stayed with this group of figurines that these are Shunga terracottas. As a result, what happens is, this is from Ropar in Punjab, but it is still Shunga terracotta. So I just want to tell you that, of course, think of the Shungas. It's a dynastic bracket. We're talking about Punjab, right? We'll still call it, this is not my label. This I have taken from this particular website which I have mentioned. And this also. It's a terracotta figurine of a particular time period which possibly had come from a stratified or unstratified context of find, right? Why do you need to put it as Shungas? Right? So this problem is much complex, so we need to reconsider before calling it something as Kushana art, Shunga art, sometimes Gupta art is extended pre-Gupta, Gupta and late Gupta and post-Gupta art, right? Where actually are we getting? We are confusing by using such labels. Of course, at one point there were particularly patronized schools, such as the Palas, patronize certain art school, Guptas also. But beyond that, if we are trying to fix certain labels, we are not doing a justice with that. Now I will come to the fourth point, the problem with context and context loss. And every time I talk about sculptures, I try to make this point hard, that of course, there is an art historical value, aesthetic value. Of course, there are spiritual values of our visual culture. We of course understand that, we respect that. But at the end of the day, we need to ask this question: what are art or images without their context? So the whole presentation, that the images that I will show, in the whole complete presentation, 95% of those images are not in India. This I have done deliberately to show that the amount of context loss that has happened to sculptures, and you know what, I would not hesitate to say this, that the context loss has happened because of our exaggerated attention to the artistic and spiritual values of images. We had failed to note down provenance. We had failed to give proper attention to primary ritual context of images and sculptures. We have been so mesmerized by our rich visual tradition that we have forgot to record the context, and the result is all the beautiful pieces are mostly in the international museums. So I'm coming back to this. There are good and bad cases. So I am saying that most of the images that I am showing here, okay, this modern technology is failing me. Yes. Particularly, I'm talking about the Pratihara now. I'll come into a quick succession of the images. Now this is very interesting, this is under publication now. This very important plaque of two Buddhist female deities, very rare, is now in LACMA, right, in Los Angeles. And somehow through the provision, this is coming from Hiramanik collection, so you must be knowing about the Hiramanik, that they were very important art house collectors, though originally from India. So we can see that somehow by chance, fraction or fraction of percentages of images have still retained their primary context, right? So I cross-checked that this is actually from there. But most cases are like this. It's from Rajasthan. Isn't that it? Rajasthan. So if you go to museums also, you will find that that much level is enough. It was enough for A.M. Broadley. It was enough for possibly Cunningham to say that this is from Uttar Pradesh, this is from Rajasthan. But where in Rajasthan? Even within Rajasthan or particular region or a particular temple, it's not recorded anymore. We have lost it. So even we can go through the collection and find another piece, and even would try to attempt that possibly they formed one group. We won't be able to understand where it originally came from. And of course, this is not on view. Of course, the photo is on view. We'll never be possibly even have to get the permission to actually see it, going to Los Angeles and even getting the permission to see it there, right? So while smuggling, of course, people will not note down. But when we are doing documentation, this is the importance that we need to understand that it is just not a one column, one box provenance. That provenance is for the next generations and generations who is going to be benefited by somebody who record the provenance correctly. That is the responsibility you should think about. It's not just one word that you are recording the provenance. Now, I'm going to go through quickly. Now, I'm going to come to, before showing you some of the easy mistakes that we do in the filling of the form or in the documentation of images, let us, because the talk is based on central region, I'll try to give you not an in-depth research, because each of would require modules of lectures, but we'll run through some how the changes happen in the representation mostly. Sorry. I showed this coming from mostly the so-called Shunga period, though this is not only the Shunga period, this is of course most importantly also time period when in the political geography the Indo-Greeks were there, the Indo-Scythians were there, the satrapas, the northern and the western satraps, they were there, and they also patronized, as well as local other minor dynasties. So if we look into the body form, you will see that there are much more how to say this, these are heavy bodies. Of course, the iconography of yakshas required them to be of heavily built. So they are firmly rooted to the ground, also adding to the protection as well as prosperity. But after that, slowly we can see that by the time of the so-called the Kushana political rule, when the Buddha images started to be reproduced, they were not known as Buddha images. If you look closely into the inscription, you will see that it records the donation of a bodhisattva. Mathura became one of the most prominent center for artistic production, also an iconographic innovation, which shows the very interesting the Kapardin Buddhas. So there are many studies iconographically. I don't have time to go through that. Please remember that what Mathura could achieve left a very important mark, not only I'm saying as a lineage for art tradition, but also physically. How do I say physically? They are left a very important mark. There are over 300 images which were produced in Mathura and transported in early historic period to all of the different early historic sites, including including the one at Sarnath, which you can see in the museum. So the Vikshubala image, which was not, we know that Vikshubala, but it again represent the Bodhisattva, which was donated by the Vikshu Bala, and it was actually transported, can you imagine, in that time period, from Mathura, along with the stand and the shaft, as well as the chhatra. Following, of course, one of the trade routes that Sir showed, right? So it was in a salutation gesture, and the beautiful mark they left in the art lineage was the Abhaya Mudra. Buddha was Sakyamuni Siddhartha before. But in creation of the Mahapurusha, Sakyamuni Buddha, he needed to transcend his human personality. He became a god because of the Mathura art production. Mathura gave him the Abhaya Mudra. Who can have the Abhaya Mudra, right? Who can keep the hand over your head and say, you are sorted? Not many, right? Who can have that power? So Mathura gave that, and that was carried on forward physically as well as in an artistic tradition. Please help me with this. So Mathura was also innovation. They did another much innovation in the cases. I think not only Mathura, a lot of sites in that time period, including some of the very early unique iconography, came from sites like Ahitchatra, right? So we see some of the very unique iconography was produced during that time period and continued to the Gupta period. For example, this very interesting image of Standing Indra, which is now again in Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'm not going in detail for that. Sorry. Of course, from there we came to this point. Now the genius of Sarnath artist was not only taking clues from Mathura, but they understood much more, I would say. Not only Indian art tradition developed, but the artist of Sarnath school, so-called Sarnath school, in the so-called Gupta period, the golden age of art, the most striking thing about this image is not its execution or perfection. Can anybody tell me what is the most unique aspect about this? There can be multiple unique. Of course, spirituality. It was very hard to get the eyes and the inner spirituality expressed on the face. But there is something very unique also. That is symmetry. The symmetry, if you can do a cross-section, also if you divide in all possible angles this particular image, you will get acute angles. So that was the mastery of the Sarnath artist, that we are standing here and talking about it. And it's not only that, they could identify that we cannot just put the hello there. We need to put this to the Vidyadharas, right? To balance the whole scheme. So the schematic development, I would say that what we see from the so-called post-Gupta, late Gupta, so the later Gupta kings of Vihar and Magad became one of the artistic splendors of the world, it only happened much later that the Sarnath artist could take us there. Not only the sublimity of inner meditation, but also a symmetry to work on, including different aspects within that. So we see that much development happened from the Kushanas to this thing. Mathura was not lagging behind though. If we of course talk about Sarnath, but Mathura of course continue to work on the spirituality. If you look in a very close examination of the sculptures produced during the Kushana political era at Mathura and the Gupta political period at Mathura, you will see that how much they worked on adjusting to this so-called very bulkiness, to lose that, to somehow manage with that bulkiness and still bring the sublimity or spirituality within the expressions. So it was a battle. They were working at it since the starting of the Yaksha images till now. They could not lose it. So Sarnath Buddha images became more sublime, more graceful, more how to say this, but Mathura images still remain as robust, right? But still continued. Of course, you can see the material, those sandstone is very different. Particularly, I want to highlight on this very important Buddha image, also donated by monks. Yashadinna, I don't want to go into the inscription. You can see that many of the images are inscribed. I'll come back to this point, and if I forget, you should remind me. Now, Guptas also worked on the terracottas. I have promised you that the 95% of the images that I'm going to show you are not going to be from India. This is just to make us aware what we have lost already. Again, both are from auction houses. But I just want to show you that is not the focus here. The one that I want to show here is that we were dealing with this. We were dealing with bringing the spirituality not in the stone but also in the terracotta medium. We are applying, we are adjusting composite figurines. We are getting to some of the most beautiful terracotta plaques are also there from Mahichattra, and very unique episodes of mythological things are also there. You can see that. Please note this Gupta, the hair on the female head. You can see that very beautiful ways of portraying the hair. So something from Gupta is where the so-called Vardhana. Now this is another terminology that I'm finding more and more, again coming from a dynasty applied to art school, Vardhana. When I was a student, I was not familiar with this actually in my studies, but I became familiar with this term that there is something called Vardhana School of Art. Now this Vardhana is nothing coming from other than the Harsha Vardhana. So they want to mean a time period, but they to make it more understandable, people want to go for dynasties. So this is what we built on from the Gupta. The same thing will come to Bihar. We'll see that we'll call later Guptas, which were much more important than the Palas at one point to understand the foundation of art tradition. So if you look into the Vardhana, what so-called Vardhana is very, very interesting. So if you look at Vardhana time period, Vardhana art bust from Gwalior and from Sarnath, can anybody tell me the difference? Of course, there is time period, I think, of course, 200 years or something like that. Though we can see that something is from Gupta to late Gupta to the Vardhana period. We can see that both are, of course, if you see into the label, something is known as Tara. And there they have, in the National Museum, we have kept it more abstract and we have called it female bust from the Vardhana. We can see that an iconographic development which is happening, which will come into much later. So now the focus is not on the expressions only, to identify, to develop the iconographic scheme morely as the art tradition was progressing. Though something of a similar legacy from the Buddha and the Bodhisattva was carried on into the further. Again, if you look into the body, I just particularly wanted to show you the bodies. That bodies became, of course, building on the Gupta tradition of very gracile and very sublime images of this so-called S that we see. We see that a certain amount of markers are developing. These markers are also very unique. Particularly, you can see the necklace turning into a kind of a watch, and this heavy waistband jewelry. This is very interestingly late Gupta, so-called Gupta feature, which continues forward, and then this stopwatch kind of thing is still there, and you can see that there is still connection, there is still markers from the Kushana through the Gupta, via the Gupta, till the Vardhana time period also. I would not call it Vardhana. This is Ganga. Sorry. Oh my God. Sorry. Yeah. So even Sir and me, we were discussing about this while on our way here. Again, this is in the Denver Museum of Art. You can see that they did a mistake actually. They thought that this is from 500s, but it should be later, between 500 to 700s. That's why I corrected it. Again, it is from Rajasthan. So you can understand that, of course, not many from Rajasthan, and there are images from, of course, Gwalior and different parts of Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, but this particular time period, 500 to 700, is not understood properly because we have failed to focus on what are the markers which are developing. Very interesting, moving on forward, that you can see that though it is Shiva, the iconography is also very unique. Of course, it is, the acquisition is sorted again. After that, we will come to something which can be considered as pratihara, right? Again, we come to a terminology where things, can you see the stopwatch now? Kind of a stopwatch kind of thing, the necklace developing. Now it goes much further and it turns into a kind of, yes, I can't see from here, but I'm pretty sure the people in Google Meet can see. So this is again something which is developing, but look at the Vardhana type of hairdo as well as the ornamentation. So it is not a break, but a continuity. Further into the Pratihara now again is a long time period, Pratihara era. So we can't say this is Pratihara, this is from Kanauj. It's very interesting. It possibly is broken, or there were two parts of it, and we have till this much is recovered, the Matrika panel. Now you can see that if there is a question, please note it down. So we'll have a discussion later. Now you can see that there is certain change which is happening with the same necklace, right? I just want to give you one clue. Look at the necklace and look at the ornament which is coming near the waistband, right? Something you can still see like a kind of a jewel or a diadem. Oh my God. So after this, if we shift a little bit from Uttar Pradesh, this is not at all discussed about. People think that there are no more Buddha images other than this circuit. Actually, but they are now in, this is now in Australia, right, in Sydney. So we can see that one of the possible origin is Gwalior at this time period. This is much developed, and now this is not towards the very late of the Pratihara era, when the feudatory is already started to grow within the Pratihara empire, and you can see that now that has changed. The waistband ornament has changed, the necklace is very different, but a very interesting development. Possibly they made this both couple of image in the 10th century. Sorry. And finally, from that, if we come back to Sarnath, before going back to Sarnath, to the Vajratara, which is much more, I want to also tell you what is generally understood as the so-called Khajuraho Chandela kind of 11th century development. Again, forget about the dynasty. Look into the art, you will yourself understand how the body shape has changed. It has become more ornamented, but the ornaments or a kind of decorations have become more pointed. So as I progress through the time, we see that things become much more detailed, much more pointed, much more refined, I would say, and much more in a movement. If it was not for the Chandelas, we never understood that how even starting from the Sanchi to the journey from the Sanchi to the Khajuraho, if you see that the movement of the body, how much can be achieved from basic stone. These are, sometimes you wonder that these are made from stones which could never talk. You not only gave them life, not only gave them expressions, you gave them a story. A story so beautiful that international art markets are, so we have to be the guardians of our this such excellence that our forefathers could achieve into that. Not only that, a very interesting, a very lesser studied, lesser understood image is now in the Sarnath Museum. I request all of you to go and see. Now look into the waistband and the ornament. I just took one. We can do the same exercise for all of the markers. So if you look into the ornament now, try to look into the shift, the transition into this. It has become more pointed, it has become more heavy, and also, though we won't call this as Chandela, this is so-called again understood as Gadwal art, which I never understand how the whole art tradition can shift with the political time period. Of course, there was patronage. Possibly this image itself was installed with the patronization of the queen, Kumara Devi. And this is one of the most interesting images of Tara that I have come across so far. Has the same kind of a kind of luster, same kind of ornamentation, but now you can clearly understand which is the transition even within early medieval. So this can be dated by 11th to 12th century. So by the 11th century, this much achievement is possible. I started from the yakshas till this point. Now coming to the other points that we can still understand, okay, now this is so-called our, the very grand, can we do this exercise? Is it correct? We saw some images. Can anybody tell me, is the date correct for this? This is now in Lakma and I have not changed. This is how the entry in the museum at Lakma goes, the online collection. It is recorded as 850 to 900. Is it correct? Any clues?
She has given several clues. She has given several clues to identify. What she was talking about is how to document the sculpture. She has so far talked about how to document the sculptures found in this region and how this progression has happened from Mathura, Kushana period onwards, and we have reached Pratihara, then Gadwala, as per dynastically. The tradition of assigning dynasties to images, and she has said that this is not correct for various reasons, and she has now given stylistical development of various features, how to identify objects or sculptures of particular periods. Okay, Kushana, then from Mathura 1st to 3rd century, something like that, then Gupta, and then of course Vardhana, and then Pratihara, and of course then of Chandela, and then of course your Gadwala, etc. She is now asking, on the basis of her clues, she has already given to you the clues, development of this thing.
Is it 11th and 12th century AD? How many would agree and disagree?
Reason. Please provide the reason.
Clue you have for Gadwal or Chandel?
No. What is the clue?
What is the, no, you don't, that is the thing that I don't want you to do. I don't want you to understand or identify the time based on the dynasty. I want you to identify looking closely at the image and try to look into the execution and the style.
The styles.
What are the clues? She has given the clues of development, stylistical development.
मैम मैं एक चीज़ कहना चाहूँगा कि जो आप बार बार कह रही हैं कि जैसे गुप्ता एज आर्ट कह रहे हैं इसको, तो जो आर्ट हिस्टोरियंस हैं उन्होंने ये मेथड डेवलप किया है कि आर्ट के स्टाइल के आधार पे हम उस टाइम पीरियड को रखें, क्योंकि जो मूर्तियाँ होती हैं ये इन पे इंस्क्रिप्शंस होते नहीं हैं, तो हम
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल वही बात तो मैं आप लोगों को बताना चाह रही हूँ कि मैम आई थिंक आई विल जस्ट टेल बिकॉज द टाइम इज ऑल्सो वी आर रनिंग. सो यस यू वांटेड टू से जस्ट.
जैसे कि आप बोला ज्वेलरी के बारे में.
हाँ बिल्कुल
आगे बढ़ते गए तो उसका ज्वेलरी और भी ज़्यादा
बिल्कुल
भारी होते गए
और फिगर का in the shape also try to see the more that we progress with time from 9 to 10, the scheme of the images also develop. The more we come to from the so-called pratiharas, I mean from the 9th century to the 11th 12th century, you will see that they want to show their excellence as much as possible. Right? So there will be more features in the scheme. There will be more elements within the scheme. Sometimes we feel that they've just wanted to show off, you know. These people wanted to show off how better and how beautiful they can make. That's why Hoysala is so beautiful, so much ornate. Actually, no. Art is not without politics. It's a way of claiming legitimacy and sovereignty, because these smaller dynasties are fighting. They want to show excellence everywhere. That is the only way they can claim a pan-Indian, at least pan-North Indian sovereignty. It's a way of claiming legitimacy also, right? As well as how much artisans and craftsmen you can employ, for which you need that much of resources. So please don't dissociate art from the contemporary politics, society, economy, and just by looking at the art or the aesthetic value. Of course you should look at the aesthetic value. So now moving forward, of course this level is wrong. Let them have it wrong, because you know.
What is the objective clue, not the subjective one?
Of course, the objective clue would be the ornaments, the posture, the grouping of the elements, and also please understand, the best clue, if you go to Sarnath Museum also, there would be rounded images, and there would be always pieces like this. This was not a particular under-worship image. This is a fragment from a niche either, or from an architectural member sometimes. Because early medieval time period, Sir will talk about temples, and Sir will show that every corner had a particular meaning. What image or what icon goes in which corner has a particular meaning within a temple. Temple is not just, Sir will talk about it, I'm not going there. So sculptures, when it is in connection with a temple, that is your biggest clue. When do we have more and more rich and ornate temples? So when you look at images, my plea to all of you and those listening online is, don't look at for the dynastic or art historical clues. Try to study the image minutely. It will tell you automatically. We'll do that exercise if we still have time. I guess I have 10 minutes to wrap up. So these are the things that I have seen. The mistakes are done in the form as well, and even my students or whoever goes in the documentation, they do the same mistakes. So we try to understand the stylistic and time period. Now description. This is the thing that we sometimes miss. So for the images, ma'am has given you a very detailed lecture yesterday. The description, you should feel it, right? And sometimes I will just give you 2 examples. Again, something is wrong with the website. I'm not going into that part. This is from our Indian Museum. This is our museum government portal. Ma'am, what is the name of the website? Ma'am, what is the name of the... No, our government, museum government website. Jatan, right? Jatan. So this is a documentation done in the Jatan format for our museums, antiquities. So what is wrong here? Brief description is boar incarnation of Vishnu. That's just brief discussion. But apart perfect example of entering the description. You can yourself do this exercise. You go to Google. If you have access to Google, you can search for the online collection of Met, Lakma, and try to see how the description is done. There are many, what Madam has said, that these are what are the elements in the forms? Parameters, right. Try to see for one image how many parameters exist. We are not doing all those, but I want to tell you that they thought of these parameters when they were developing this website for one image. Particularly, I like the Met, this thing, because they have given overview, provenance, possible date range, dimensions, classifications, and then there is another one is about the artwork details, which is in the later part. So where you can see that again references and possible exhibition history, everything is there. So all those are thought that this information somebody might wish to know about this particular image, right? So when you are documenting an image, like for example, this one that you did yesterday, this is under the antiquity for the Sarnath circle, right? Now this is very even totally damaged, like only a partial, it's a broken part of an image, right? Now we have to clearly see about the ornaments, particularly the head, particularly the scheme. You might not be able to do at this, but please understand that this is you are seeing and documenting. There can be one person from New Zealand who was working on Sarnath School of Art. They might need to see in future 10 years, 20 years from now, this particular image. For him or her, this will be very important. But for you, while documenting, it might not be that important, right? So try to put yourself in that shoes. From India, after 20 years, somebody would be looking into the NMMA website for their own data. Try to understand there is a greater responsibility in doing the dimensions properly, in doing whatever description you can give. Not in a very judgmental way, which Akshat also told you about, but in a way that you can understand whatever is visible. Try to do your best. And most importantly, when it comes to image, like I want to show you here, try to include both sides of photographs, whoever is documenting. This is most crucial element. Try to include as much as possible. Just like Jha sir told in the morning, if you don't possibly do a photograph of both sides of coins, you might see that, okay, nothing is there on the back. For you, nothing, of course. But who will not know? If you don't do a photograph and show nothing is there, that creates greater confusion. There could have been an inscription, such as, for example, this image is important. You know the most crucial important for that? Because somebody noted and read the inscription on the below. Image, the clues, for example, these are minor, small images which most of the time we see in the documentation. If we don't include, somebody can access the NMMA website, they can read, they can develop their own research based on your photograph. So it is very crucial you do, while doing a documentation of sculptures, photograph from the both sides. Because sometimes these are not only donative inscription, there are names of the person who gave money or who commissioned the making of this image. Coming towards the very last, for example, again, another example. Can you tell what is this? This is also under publication, so I don't want to. This is a very curious case that I found. Even a small piece. These are sometimes those who are there from Archaeology Survey of India, they often encounter this kind of small images. These are double-sided. So the first one was the female deity that you can see here. And possibly this is again from the early phase of the Vardhana to the Pratihara, that dynastic time period. But for for me, it would be somewhere around 8th to 9th century. But during the 10th century, what happened? Somebody took the same piece and made from a Buddhist deity, they made a Ardhanarishwar. In the same, using the same stone. So it is very crucial that we look into and understand images, and image is complete, and study can be only done while not only the main icon in there, the scheme, the back side, particularly if, for example, this one, I think one of the groups sitting there had this. This is again a partially fragmented image of Tara. Now, for me it is very easy to tell you Tara. For you, it won't be very easy for the first time who are documenting. But what you can do is, you can clearly see. You will say that this is a male image. Mostly if we cannot, so I just don't want, if we have grown into this society only. When we cannot see anything, we just say it's a deity or male deity. We don't want to even go into the female fraction of the things. So this is a female deity. Why? Because you have to study the abdomen. The way the abdomen is portrayed, the way the thighs are portrayed, particularly the pedestal. This image is not only Sarnath, of the Sarnath site. You know, there is a huge important thing within this small piece. This image, somebody made who was familiar with how the images are being made in Magad. There are particular elements within this where you can see from the Gaya region, or Sarnath to Gaya or Gaya to Sarnath, the networks that you can see how for using within, even after using this double petal lotus seat, the artist thought of making her feet, because she is Tara, not rested on the air, but adding as miniature lotus there. And this hand is Varada Mudra, the signature for Tara itself. So for you, you can just say that this is a broken part of a female deity. Okay? But you also in the description needs to put, in your remarks in the NMMA form, you can say that your observation, I can still see there is a portion within the abdomen, or there is a small lotus added for the feet. You can add those elements into that. And you need to incorporate this back. Now what is unique about the back? It has marks. No, there is no inscription, sadly. There are marks. So somebody who is studying, this will be crucial for them. Every single incision on a stone image is always meaningful. We have only gone to museums and look at sculptures and seen, oh, this is very nice, this is beautiful, okay, this is splendid, and then come back. But we have not taken the time to understand this is the entire story within this broken piece. Right? So let us be more meaningful to images and sculptures. Now trying to, Nishant. Just got it. Okay, fine. The final point of the whole entire talk that I want to tell you about is the problem of authenticity and art loss. This I touched in the beginning, and I'm ending the talk again with this. Why we need the NMMA project, we need more and more participations, more focused documentation, because this I published in two years back. Till now, starting from Huntington to the Gina Bangdale to all great names, if you hear, they have studied this image. This is one of there is an entire biography of this image. From Sirpur, it was found from the Sirpur site. Some of you must be knowing about Sirpur. I don't want to go in detail. Sirpur is very unique and very complex. Some sir is also there. Yes. So rather than going to Sirpur, you will see that there is always this bronze hoard which was found. There is many images which M.G. Dixit sir has published, studied, of course, very interestingly. But this image particularly was found in seclusion from one of the near to the temple. We do not know how it got to near to the temple. And this has made all of us scratch our heads. Because we can simply do it like that. Till now, thanks to Pratapaditya sir, the title, though after severe publications put forward by Goreshwar Bhattacharya sir, it has been said that there is, in the entire Sadhanamala, there is no iconographic form which says Shyama Tara. It comes much later. There is a Shyama variety, which is the green variety, but due to the work that has been done, Pratapaditya sir has identified this as Shyama Tara with, again, a Tara as well as Vrukiti attendant. Some of us can go into that. There are other research which has published and said that this is Pragya Paramita, somebody has Vrukiti. I'm not going into the detail. There is almost like 60 years of publications on this. So it was very, very risky for me when I'm starting my career to touch on this. And I don't want to go into the detail. My identification can be entirely wrong. If somebody can prove or counter-prove the aspects that I tried to do the identification with. My point was that because of the identification mark, so now I'm coming to the most crucial problem, identification. Even if we identify the basics, there are multiple issues within identification, particularly images from central regions are less understood because there is a focus on Pala school, Pala art, and then people even don't want to get into the details, only otherwise it will be Khajuraho. So we don't want to get into the complex idea that many interesting temple or Buddhist sites developed unique iconography. For example, there is a very interesting one from Sarnath. But this one was very puzzlesome. Somehow, 1960s, through the Hiramanics, National Hiramanics, it was donated to the Boston first, and then again it landed in LACMA. There are also images available from Pratapaditya sir's article where you can see that this is a portable kind of shrine where you can take out the pieces and you can rejoin them. So there is a very complex workmanship involved in producing it. So the date has been given as 8th century, which is also puzzlesome. People won't say that because the other bronze images were dated by 9th, 10th century. People said that this is also 8th century. Now people, when we do not identify a female Buddhist deity, we say that this is Tara. The best thing that we do to any female Buddhist deities, which if we understand that this is Buddhist, we just say this is Tara. We do Tara for Mamaki, we do Tara for Chunda, we do Tara for Pragya Paramita. Everywhere we just say that this is Tara. But the thing is not so easy. I tried to compare whether actually the provenance is true. Provenance matters a lot, and I found that there are clues which can actually date it, though there are other opinions also. I was trying to also connect it with Chunda, which was my initial identification, and I shifted. Then I found that no, for understanding something in Sirpur, we cannot just look into Bihar. We need to understand 8th century contemporary sites, which would be something like Elora, right? So I got clues and I understood that possibly this image is actually belonging to Mahamayuri, who was one of the personification of a Dharani, very complex deity. Some of you might not even heard of that. So it's not just Tara and Vrukiti, and if you go a little further, Pragya Paramita or Chunda. There are complex iconographies, and early iconographies were much more complex. Later only popular deities were reproduced, like Manjusri, Maitreya or Avalokiteshwar. So I just want to end with that identification is not very easy all the time. And there are cases like this. This is the last slide. Can anybody see what is there? This is in museum reserve collection, and this is the fake, which is made and which is going to be sold by somebody who is going to buy. They're not going to understand that they would say that this is a pair of the same image which was made. So if you look closely, you can always see that there are high chances of fakes, and particular images like this, which are published, have easier things that people want to get. Just look at the pedestal. People do say that people will actually fall for that. Of course, they made two of this, right? Sorry? No, just going back. This is a very clear replica of our very beloved Vishnu from National Museum. This is known as a replica. So this is a very crude. But we are also puzzled with pieces like this, where there is entire group working on making replicas of Mathura, as well as particularly terracotta objects which are easier to make fakes about. They are put into wells, they are aged artificially, they are made, the patina is artificially made, and they are sold on very high, this thing. So particularly, you can see coming back to the Gupta hair. Can you see the same replication of the Gupta hair? But still, this is a fake because of the patina that you can identify towards so I just want to skip. Thank you. We need more detailed observations and detailed study. Thank you very much for giving me time, extended time. Thank you, Madhulika ma'am.